Welcome to the deep dive.
Hi there.
Okay, let's jump right in. We're talking about Apple today.
Yep, the tech giant everyone knows.
We've been digging into a source from The Economist.
A pretty critical look, actually.
Yeah, it looks at where Apple stands right now, especially, with this huge AI wave building up. And the core question the article gets into is whether Apple's famous control, that really tight grip on its ecosystem.
Which, let's be honest, has been a massive strength for them historically.
Exactly. Is that strength now, maybe, possibly holding them back?
It's a fascinating time for them, isn't it? The source mentions some headwinds.
Right.
Things like potential impacts from trade tariffs, with products made in Asia.
Yeah.
And ongoing regulatory pressure, too.
Okay.
It specifically nods to that fight with Epic Games over the App Store.
Ah, yes.
And how that whole legal battle could put, a lot of money in jeopardy. The Force cites reports mentioning something like $30 billion a year just from app fees.
Wow, okay. $30 billion. Yeah, that definitely gets your attention.
It does.
But the article, it really seems to zero in on AI, doesn't it? As the place where this tight control philosophy might be creating, real challenges.
Definitely. It brings up Siri, for instance.
Right, which the source suggests has kind of lagged behind competitors for a while.
Yeah, hasn't quite kept pace. And they mentioned that preview last year, remember?
Oh, yeah, the one about a new Siri.
A version that could handle more complex stuff by pulling data from different apps.
But it apparently hasn't actually shipped yet.
Correct. Still waiting on that one.
And what's really interesting is how the reading connects these AI struggles or perceived struggles directly back to Apple's core philosophy, especially around user privacy.
Absolutely. Their whole business model is selling hardware, right? Not ads.
Exactly, which lets them prioritize privacy in a way maybe others can or don't.
The ones who rely on, hoovering up user data.
So the source points out their initial AI strategy was rooted right there.
In privacy.
Yeah.
Run a smaller model directly on the device.
Keep personal data private, don't send it off to the cloud.
Access emails, messages, locally, all processed right there on your phone.
Sounds very Apple, very focused on keeping your stuff.
Yeah.
Well, your stuff.
It does. But the article suggests this approach maybe isn't quite delivering the goods. That seems to be the crux of the problem identifies in the piece.
Okay.
A small AI model running just on your phone. It simply can't match the sheer power and complexity of those huge models running in the cloud.
Like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini.
Exactly. Those big ones. And while Apple could theoretically build its own massive cloud model.
They have the resources, presumably.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But the source highlights the challenge.
Yeah.
They've basically promised not to heavily use that giant pool of user data they sit on.
And that data is typically crucial for training these really powerful, cutting-edge AI models.
Right. It's the standard fuel for them.
So this is where it gets particularly interesting, because facing this issue with their on-device AI, the source says Apple started looking outside for help.
Makes sense.
We've seen Siri sometimes offer to hand off trickier questions to ChatGPT already.
Although the article calls that interaction kind of clunky, you get those permission prompts every single time.
Right, interrupts the flow.
And then the source notes that at their big developer conference, the one that kicked off June 9th,
WWDC, yeah.
They actually announced a more integrated partnership with OpenAI.
Okay, so moving beyond just handoffs.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
The details described involve letting ChatGPT get deeper access to device functions.
With user permission, obviously.
Always with permission, yes. Enabling it to do things like understand what's on your screen and answer questions about it.
Oh, interesting. Context aware.
And also integrating ChatGPT into Apple's own programming tools.
So steps are definitely being taken. They're acknowledging they need maybe some outside AI muscle.
They are. But the source's main argument, the central point, is that just partnering up or handing things off, it isn't really enough.
Not enough to truly meet the challenge of this AI era. Right. So the core recommendation, the takeaway from this reading, is that instead of trying to control which AI models or capabilities can run on Apple devices.
Which is their default instinct, right? Control.
Totally. The article says they should actually empower users to decide. Let users pick which AI models they want to use.
Now, that definitely cuts against the grain for Apple, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The source admits that. Calls it going against deep-seated instincts for control.
Which it even suggests might have intensified under current leadership. But the article makes a case that this kind of openness It might not be the existential threat Apple perhaps perceives it as.
Okay, how so?
It pulls out a really powerful historical analogy to make the point.
Okay. History lesson time?
Sort of. It goes right back to the beginning of the iPhone story.
2007, the first one.
Exactly. And Apple's initial stance back then was pretty rigid. No third-party native apps allowed.
Right, only web apps through the browser. They wanted total control, security, user experience.
Total control. But then, remarkably, just 1 year later, 2008.
They did a complete 180.
Completely reversed course. Opened the gates and launched the App Store.
Allowing outside developers in, still curated, of course, but native apps.
And that decision, the source argues, wasn't some kind of retreat. It unleashed this absolute torrent of creativity.
Oh, for sure. Innovation, new tools, games, services. It totally transformed what a smartphone could even do.
The article basically credits that specific move with being instrumental in making the iPhone the dominant, incredibly successful thing it is today.
Okay, I see the parallel they're drawing.
That's the analogy. The ultimate suggestion from the source is Apple should apply that same kind of, well, courageous decision-making from 2008 to the AI challenge they face today.
Opening up the platform to let users choose and interact with different AI models.
That's presented as Apple's best path forward, not just to navigate the AI revolution, but to make sure the whole iPhone ecosystem stays vibrant and successful.
For years to come.
Right.
Okay, so let's wrap up this deep dive then, focusing on the economist's perspective. Apple's facing some significant pressures.
Regulatory, economic.
And critically, from these massive AI advancements, their traditional strength, that tight control, the privacy-first on-device AI approach.
Seem to be falling a bit short compared to the big cloud models.
Right. And the source argues that while recent moves, like that OpenAI partnership announced back in June,
Are steps. Definitely steps.
they don't really go far enough. The real opportunity, maybe even the necessity,
According to the source.
lies in a much broader opening up. Something like that pivotal App Store decision back in 2008.
Allowing users genuine choice in the AI models they use on their devices.
That really does seem to capture the heart of the argument in the source material, doesn't it?
It does. It really highlights how, what used to be a company's biggest strength can become a challenge when the tech landscape shifts.
And uses that App Store parallel pretty effectively to suggest a way forward for Apple in this age of AI. So why does all this matter to you listening in?
Well, because Apple's choices here aren't just, abstract corporate strategy.
No, it directly shapes the technology probably sitting in your pocket or on your desk right now.
Absolutely. How Apple decides to integrate AI or curate it or allow access to different models that fundamentally changes the features, the capabilities, even just the feel of using your iPhone or iPad or Mac.
And it also touches on how your personal data gets handled, right? Even if you have more choice. Privacy implications are still there.
Always a factor with Apple.
Which leaves us with a final thought to maybe mull over after this deep dive.
Okay.
The source explicitly suggests Apple should let users decide which AI models run on their devices.
That level of openness.
Yeah. So what might the practical implications of that actually look like in your daily life?
Good question.
Would it be like a simple switch in settings? Use Siri for basic stuff, but flip to a big cloud model for complex research.
Or could different apps maybe leverage different AIs based on what you prefer?
And how would that level of choice really change your experience, your day-to-day interaction with AI through those Apple devices?
Definitely something to think about.